The tall gates of Blackwood Asylum rose in front of them like a ragged cut in the night sky, half open as though beckoning the inquisitive and the stupid to enter. The rusted iron twisted in strange ways. The moon shone low behind heavy clouds, illuminating the asylum's dilapidated exterior with a spooky silver glow. Broken windows and cracked bricks revealed tales of abuse and neglect. This abandoned location had been left to rot and decay for decades, a holdover from a more sinister time when medical procedures were brutal experiments, and the cries of the confined reverberated endlessly through sterile, cold corridors. There was rust, mildew, and something else in the air, a lingering stench that hinted at agony and forgotten horrors. With whispered stories of spectral apparitions wandering the asylum's corridors, shadowy figures watching from broken windows, and agonized screams that broke the stillness of the night, locals avoided the asylum after dusk. Former patients' restless spirits, imprisoned in never-ending agony, were said to wander the corridors, pleading to be heard, their tales buried beneath layers of dust and hopelessness. It was said that the doctors who had once passed through these halls had gone insane, leaving a sinister mark on the structure from their perverse experiments. Nobody ventured inside, and those who did never came out the same. A handful of urban adventurers assembled at the gates tonight, lured by a perilous concoction of curiosity and bluster. Emma, a young woman with an unquenchable desire to learn the truth behind Blackwood's notorious reputation, was one of them. With her flashlight piercing the pitch-black darkness ahead, she pressed on resolutely, her camera dangling ready around her neck. The others trailed behind with hesitation, their voices low and anxious, their breaths audible in the chilly air. The gates swung open with a groan and a screech, revealing the dark interior of the asylum, a vast entrance engulfed in silence and shadows. The air inside was heavy with decades of decay and forgotten pain, thick and oppressive. As they stepped carefully over broken debris and cracked tiles, dust hung in motes that danced in the beams of their flashlights. Peeling paint and graffiti covered the walls. Some were crude, some were desperate messages written by past intruders, and some might have been the faint marks of souls attempting to communicate from beyond. The corridors were filled with broken glass, rusted beds, and old wheelchairs, relics of a place that had witnessed unspeakable suffering. Each step reverberated, the sound swiftly absorbed by the deafening silence that felt like a physical burden pressing down on their shoulders. The flicker of a broken light overhead, the sudden cold drafts that whispered through the corridors, and the odd ephemeral shadows that appeared to move just beyond the edge of Emma's vision were all captured by her steady clicking camera. There was a growing sense of dread in the charged electric atmosphere, unintelligible but unavoidable. Whispers appeared to curl through the atmosphere. Then, almost imperceptibly, a voice broke the stillness with a gentle, frantic cry that made their spines tingle. "Help me!" As the temperature continued to drop, the group froze, their breath coming in shallow gasps, every nerve on edge. After decades of silence, the asylum began to awaken as the shadows grew longer and changed. Emma gripped her camera tighter, her heart beating faster than the thunder rolling outside. The building was alive, watching, waiting, and hungry for more. It was no longer merely a relic. Panic clawed its way up their throats, each breath loud and uneven as the oppressive darkness engulfed them whole. Something cold, wet, and distinctly human touched Emma's arm as her fingers scrabbled along the chilly, crumbling wall, desperate for some sense of direction. Her heart pounded as she jerked away, but the feeling returned, this time taking hold of her wrist with a cold, unforgiving vigor. When the flashlight's lights abruptly flared back to life, not of their own doing, and it became clear that the room had changed, she gasped and tried to pull away. The damaged furniture had vanished. Now the mold-stained walls were spotless, with tidy book and game shelves lining them. A circle of patients sat in the middle, their eyes unblinking and hollow as they gazed at the new arrivals. They all remained motionless, not even blinking, and gradually started turning their heads in unison in the direction of Emma's group. Behind them a nurse emerged, her white uniform immaculate, her smile unnaturally broad. "It's visiting hours," she said in a warm but incorrect voice, her syllables too long. The tapping sound came back, this time coming from under the floor and getting louder, like something was scuttling right under the boards. Then the scene flickered, like a reel of film burning too hot, and the patients were gone, replaced in a moment by the dust-choked, rotting ruin they had first seen. The wheelchair in the corner, however, was now pointing straight at them rather than the wall. The faceless figure was sitting inside it, closer than ever, its head moving in quick, sharp motions. Now they were surrounded by the deafening tapping that was coming from all sides. A long, skeletal hand slowly descended from the ceiling above, its yellowed nails reaching for Emma's head as the temperature continued to drop, and their breath became heavy in the air. The shrill sound of a metal door swinging open on rusty hinges was followed by a violent slam that reverberated from somewhere deep within the asylum, and she stumbled back just in time. The voice came back, distorted and angry, somewhere down the corridor. "You are already one of us." As though hundreds of hands were pounding on the walls from within, the tapping became a pounding, and dust rained down from the ceiling with every thud. The corridor they had entered was gone, replaced by a smooth, undamaged wall, and the group turned to run. Deeper into the asylum, where the shadows writhed and moved on their own, and something waited just out of sight. Breathing in perfect time with their own was the only path forward. As though the whole building were alive and attempting to force them farther inside, the pounding intensified into a thunderous roar. Emma's flashlight shook wildly in her hands as she pushed herself forward, her lungs burning. The beam pierced the darkness just enough to show peeling walls splattered with faint, childlike bloody fingerprints. There was no wind stirring the air, but a door at the end of the hall hung half open, rocking slightly on its hinges. The wall behind them started to swell and pulse, as though something was trying to get through. But something about it felt wrong. There was nothing they could do. Inside the room, rows of rusty hospital beds with cracked leather restraints strapped to them extended into the darkness. A few beds were vacant, others weren't. Under blankets eaten by moths, figures lay motionless, their chests rising and falling in a slow, robotic rhythm. The closest one suddenly sat up as Emma moved closer, its head jerking toward her with a sickening crack. Its mouth moved silently, forming a word she couldn't understand, but its eyes were milky white. The figures then all sat up simultaneously. Each bed, each patient. They moved in unison, their dead eyes staring at the invaders. A sharp metallic smell filled the air as the overhead lights flickered on in a sickening strobe. With their feet dragging on the tile and their mouths still moving in silence, the patients started to get out of bed. Until the noise. The floor reverberated with a low, guttural chant that grew louder with each step they took. With her heart racing, Emma retreated, but her heel snagged on a wheelchair. The same wheelchair. Now, the faceless figure was just inches away from her, its nails scraping her skin as its hands reached out. The nurse reappeared from the far corner of the room, her smile impossible to contain, her teeth blackened and jagged. She growled, "You came to visit, but nobody ever goes." The walls started to close in, the air was heavy and thick, and the chanting reached a fever pitch, the faceless figure's head tilting slowly, seemingly appreciating its new possession, was the last thing Emma saw before the darkness engulfed her. There was silence in the asylum. Once more the beds were vacant. The wheelchair was facing the wall and sitting quietly in the corner, awaiting the next guest.